Welcome to the CQN podcast, A Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes and I'm delighted once again to be joined by our resident poet, CSC affiliation media officer and music aficionado, Kevin Graham. Welcome to the show, Kevin.
Hi there, Paul.
And it's good to see you. We're in Stirling for this particular episode, having been in Dunfermline last week. We would like to take this opportunity to thank everyone for listening to last week's pilot show. We've had some fantastic feedback, which is all being considered. Paul Gallagher's interview was very well received, and I'm glad to say that he's agreed to come back on the show this season to provide us with an honest and humorous take on Celtic. How did you enjoy the interview, Kevin?
It was a good interview. Obviously, I hadn't heard it before we recorded last week, and I was surprised at his knowledge of Celtic, Perth, Blantyre. It was a really good interview. His knowledge of Man City as well was quite impressive. Not that I know much about Man City, but it was an impressive interview. What
I liked about the Gallaghers was I remember they were on the front of the NME when Man City were not a trendy club. They weren't one of these top clubs in England at the time, and they weren't scared to nail their colours to the front cover of the NME, which is great because now they're enjoying all the success that they've had with all the superstars, whereas back then they were obviously watching Jerry Craney playing up front for them.
Paul Dickoff.
Aye. So following on from our pilot episode with Paul Gallagher, this week's very special guest is Mrs. Chris Commons, Lisa Hague. Lisa is certainly someone with a Celtic state of mind. Since moving to Scotland with Chris in 2011, she has built a strong bond with the Celtic support, and the charity work that she's been involved in is certainly in keeping with the whole ethos of our club. Chris Commons' contract has ended after 6 years at Celtic, and he's now a free agent. We received several tweets during the week to highlight some of his Celtic Park highs and lows, and I'll be reading these out later on in the show. Kevin, were you disappointed with Chris Commons' inactivity under Brendan Rodgers, or was it time to bring the curtain down on his Celtic career?
Unfortunately for Chris, he had been on the wane for a while, I reckon, probably since Dyla took over Celtic. For a player who was the fulcrum of Neil Lennon's Celtic, he was pivotal for Neil Lennon. He was intelligent, he was instinctive, he was a leader. He was a leader on the park. He was outspoken at times as well. I'm sure that the tweets are going to mention that he was outspoken, but one of the things, he looked like a Celtic player. He had that bit of football intelligence, which stood out. He suited playing for Celtic. He scored some fantastic goals. If you look back at some of the goals that he scored from outside the box, he liked to hammer a penalty. The one with Spartak when he was lucky hit the underside of the bar. Just how he burst onto the scene. 6 minutes against Aberdeen, a twist at the edge of the box, chipped the goalie. You knew at that point it was like a statement of intent. But I think we were really lucky to get him because he did have a relationship with Neil Lennon when Neil Lennon went to Nottingham Forest.
Yes.
Played with him for 6 months. Played with him for 6 months. I think what you've also got to have a look at is Commons never played above English Championship level. He played at League One and Championship. But when you looked at him, he scored some fantastic goals for us, some important goals. The goal against Carragandi really dragged us back into that tie. His last goal against Dundee United, which was one of the best performances under Ronnie Dyla. The scissor kick at the back post. So for his first goal to his last goal, and that's not even mentioned in the sidestep, he's won against Rangers the 3-0 game. It's magnificent, but there was that period where he was our main man.
Yeah, it was.
He carried us, maybe a bit too much. We over-relied on him quite heavily at times. When the goal scorers weren't scoring, we just says, Chris will pick it up. I think I remember when we got put out with Aberdeen in the Scottish Cup, Commons had an off day, we ended up out.
We did over-rely on him, didn't we?
We did.
For long
but
periods.
It was fantastic. It really, to score 91 goals from the position that he played, and also to have one season in his 6 seasons when he scored 1 goal, and for the last 2.5 seasons being a bit part player.
Yeah.
To score 91 goals shows you how important he was in that period when he was on fire, basically.
Yeah, I mean, another thing you mentioned there, he looked like a Celtic player, how we like to imagine a player to perform the style, if you like. But he was a fan's favourite. He became someone that the fans really took to, and obviously we'll be speaking to his wife as well. And, you know, as a couple, the Celtic fans really took to them. They took Celtic to their hearts. They've brought their kids up as Celtic fans. And obviously there's going to be mixed kind of emotions amongst the Celtic support regarding why he didn't play last season.
I think that's one of the reasons why he'll be fondly remembered, is because of the way that his family embraced Celtic. They embraced everything Celtic, and he knew what we were all about. His wife knew what we were all about, and it's very unusual to get somebody who has no connection with the club to jump into it like they both did. I mean, we've all heard stories of the generosity of the Commonses. Especially there is a story about the Christmas appeal for the Celtic Foundation, and when they saw the conditions that some of the families were living in, they went above and beyond the call of duty to help those families out. It's stuff like that. It makes him as fondly remembered as what he did on the park to also what he did off it. And he was dignified. When you saw him the last game against Hearts, when Brendan brought him onto the field, I mean, he was dignified. He will be remembered. I don't know a legend. Legend's a word that's bandied about a bit too often, but he'll be remembered as a very, very important Celtic player.
Definitely, and I think as well, when you consider the run that we're currently on and the possibility that will turn into a record-breaking run of consecutive league titles, people will look at the first 6 of those, or 5 anyway, and Chris Commons was very, important within that early period of this run that we're currently on. Some of the comments that have come through on Twitter from @Sean Zolio: the low point of Chris Commons' career was publicly shaming Effie Ambrose after the Juventus first leg, created a narrative which the Nigerian never recovered from, and he reckoned that was a lack of team spirit. And the high was the late penalty versus Spartak, which you've already mentioned, to get into the Champions League last 16. Nerveless. But I think a lot of the fans were quite nervous when they watched it.
Extremely nervous.
@Ollie the G, the high point, every goal against both Ibrox clubs. The low point, disrespectful rant at Ronnie when he was subbed off, and we'll talk about that in a wee moment or two. @Tom Clarkin 2, he also says, I think his rant cost him his career under Brendan Rodgers. What do you think of that?
There is weight to that theory. That public show of everything was not right in the dressing room maybe did cost him his Celtic career under Brendan Rodgers. What I would possibly say was, even when he signed his contract in, I'm going to say January 2015, I think he was already on the way down. I think even though he had the commitment, he had the heart, he still had the passion, I don't think he had the legs. I think the legs had gone at that point. He was still a very important character in the dressing room, and I do think that's possibly the only reason that he got that 2.5-year deal, because the dressing room needed leaders at that point, and Chris was possibly a popular figure in that dressing room. His influence off the field was probably more the reason that he got the contract than his influence on the field at that point. He still scored some important goals for Ronnie when Ronnie eventually played him, but he wasn't the same influence. Has that got anything to do with the whole Celtic team under Dyler? We can only have our own views on that.
And I think the fans could identify, as you were saying there, with him as well, so it was an important signing from that kind of angle. And I don't want to just speak about all the the rants and various other things, not playing for a whole season. I mean, as you say, he brought a lot to the club, a hell of a lot. Joe Edwards, the high point was the wee sit down with his arms folded after scoring against those people. Who's he talking about? That was a good celebration. He was good at celebrating, wasn't he? I remember the League Cup celebration, the semi-final, where he was running with that look on his face. That was another high point from one of the tweeters. And Tam Rabam 1 says that the high point was telling Ronnie how it really was. Another high point was a debut goal, the home debut goal, away debut goal, Rangers debut goal, countless European goals, 30 plus goals in one season, all for 300 grand. So that's obviously a Chris Commons fan. And another one that was mentioned was this celebration when he ran away in the League Cup semi-final. Now, the spat with Ronnie, everybody will have their own view about it, but I'm thinking back to some other kind of very public spats Celtic players have had with the gaffer, if you like. And I can vividly recall wee Joe Miller coming on against Aberdeen.
I was against Aberdeen,
and then being subbed back off, and he stopped short at taking the jersey off, but he certainly thought about it because he pulled it out his shorts. He was giving Billy McNeill dog's abuse, so very brave man, I believe. And the other story was wee Jinky getting taken off and swearing at Jockstein, who was in the dugout, and then Jockstein stood up and banged his head and made him even angrier. And by the time he had made it into the changing room, wee Jinky had locked himself in the cubicle. So these things do happen. It's never nice to see from a Celtic fan's perspective when somebody falls out, either with a teammate or with their boss. But you mentioned something very interesting before we started recording this, and that was Brendan Rodgers has also faced that with one of our star players.
Well, back to the Partick game towards the end of last season with Lee Griffiths, and Griffiths was showing petulance on the way off the park, and he kept on mouthing into the dugout, and one look from Rodgers stopped it. Then at the final whistle, again this is maybe something to do with Brendan's media management, he knew that the cameras would have been on him and Griffiths, so he went up to Lee, put his arm round him and started whispering in his ear, then gave him a kiss. So at that moment, we don't know what Brendan was saying to him, but he diffused the situation at that moment. That situation was then going to get carried on behind closed doors. Mm-hmm. There wasn't any, it was a public making up, but you don't know what Brendan whispered in his ear. You don't know if Brendan was whispering in his ear, I'm going to see you inside, or you don't know he's saying, look wee man, we've only got one fit striker, I've done it for your own good.
Yes.
You don't know what the whisper was, but it was the image. It was that image. It was a media managed image to say this has been sorted. Then when it went to the Brendan's interview after the game, he says, I had a word with him, it's fine.
Drawn a line under it.
We move on. Then you get the story that Lee texted him at 7 o'clock the following morning. So I think that tells its own story of Mr. Griffiths been up all night thinking about what he had done.
But I mean, these guys, they're only human, of course, but they're so competitive, and you know, it's the red mist sometimes, and they can just kick off. It's not nice to watch, but you're right, it was dealt with so well by Brendan Rodgers. And going back to Commons, I mean, when you look at his career, as you say, he almost scored 100 goals. He won 5 league titles in a row. Top goal scorer in 2013-14 with 32, where he was Scotland's Player of the Year. 2 Scottish Cups and a League Cup. Scored in the League Cup final of 2015, and he won 2 doubles. So when we look back on his career, it's a fantastic one, really, when you think about the first couple of seasons. Well, he came in the January, and then the big thing I was going to mention to you, in his first full season at Celtic Park, he disappeared. He seemed to disappear from the first team for a bit, and there was all these rumours of a spat between him and Neil Lennon. This resulted in Commons playing down the speculation by turning up to training in a neck brace. I don't know if you remember seeing the pictures.
Yes.
And it looked as though his Celtic career might actually be coming to a close back then, and this was before his fantastic seasons where he was the Scotland Player of the Year, etc. With that spat, and the one that later followed with Ronnie Dyler, was there the possibility that he was quite a tough player to manage?
I don't think so. I think he was a character that managers like in the dressing room. He was a leader. He was more a leader than Scott Brown, in the period where he was the main player in Neil Lennon's team. And while his public slagging of Effie probably did leave a bad taste, I think he was speaking for the heart. I think he was speaking at utter disappointment that we had got through a tough Champions League group. We got to the last. We got to the last 16. We're playing a Juve team who, for that point, really kicked on. I think 2 semi-finals, 2 finals since we've played them. But for Effie to make that mistake at nothing each changed the game. With Ambrose, and one of the tweeters is right, Ambrose was never the same after that, because he had the whole. He then had opposition fans applauding when he was coming on.
Yeah.
And when you look at Effie Ambrose's, I'm not going to say charge sheet, his CV, if you covered the name at the top of Effie Ambrose's CV and you say you've got a player that's won an African Cup of Nations, 2 last 16s, last 32 a World Cup, and listed his honours, and you would go, anybody would go, but he's available for nothing, I'll try and sign him. Then if you lifted the name, they'll go, oh, it's Effie. But the man, he's had a decent career.
He certainly has. And I think Hibs are the right club for him at this moment in time, you know, to have gone and signed with Hibs with Neil Lennon. What do you reckon of that move for Effie?
Again, he must have enjoyed it. And he seems to be the type of guy who is very, very good in a changing room. He seems like a big likeable fella. I didn't like him backflipping for Hibs, that sort of thing. And somebody needs to have a wee word with him. And these front flips and that's for us.
It's like he's doing it dirty on us.
It is, definitely.
But I mean, I think any manager to buy a player twice shows you obviously the confidence that Neil Lennon has in Effie Ambrose. And I think Hibs looking on to next season as well, it was a bit of a statement of intent. It's quite a good, you know, international player who's won a lot of honours. Of course, they've lost Cummins, but I think that they'll probably come in for another couple of players. Will they go for Chris Commons?
Well, I'm sure I read somewhere that Chris was speaking about retirement. I don't know whether there's maybe injuries, because Brendan says when people were calling for him to play in the last game against Hearts, Brendan says at that point that he had never trained with Celtic since he had returned with Hibs. So is there an underlying injury there? Is there a problem there? And I'm sure it was an interview with the Celtic website. Yeah. Commons says he was actually considering retiring.
It'd be a shame at the age of 33. You think maybe at a decent level he could play for another couple of seasons? Pay
as you play. If he is struggling, surely some club would take his influence around the place.
Why? I mean, the experience that he's got. I mean, it's sad enough. I was having a think actually about some of these players who seem to carry an extra bit of weight, Kevin, you know, and from the past I'm thinking Bobby Murdoch, George Conley, Pat McCluskey, and in the modern era you've got John Hartson and Scott McDonald, and probably in that same bracket Chris Commons. But it didn't seem to affect their performances. They were all great players in the teams that they played in. However, you know, Commons was in that bracket, but he seemed to use it to his advantage. He used his build to his advantage, you know. Kenny Dalglish used to use his arse to, you know, shield the ball and get past players. Can that type of player survive under modern coaches such as Ronnie Deila and Brendan Rodgers? You know, the guy who's maybe carrying half a stone. John Hartson used to talk about eating crisps and the team coach and drinking full fat juice, and that's frowned upon now. Can these guys still play in the modern game?
I went to the Scotland-England game last week, and what hit me was the size of the England team. Athletic, physical. Even a player like Dele Alli, who I thought was round about the same size as Raheem Sterling. No, he's 6 foot. The two fullbacks, Kyle Walker and the boy Bertram. Pace, power. If they ran into me or you, we would be in casualty. The game's changed when I see these elite athletes. Unfortunately, guys like Chris are not going to be around.
No.
And I must admit, maybe the England team was a bit too physical, because I've seen the Germans as well, and I saw England against France, and again the Germans and the French, both strong, powerful sides, athletic, really, really athletic, but had better technical ability than the England players.
Yeah.
The England players seem to have went for athleticism over technical ability. I mean, Harry Kane looks like a centre half. I was really, the Scottish players looked like physical midgets alongside them, and it's the same with Paddy McCourt.
Yeah,
Paddy
McCourt,
born in the wrong generation.
Yeah, he was a throwback to the Andy Richies of this world, who obviously was a bit of a cult hero from the 1970s.
With Commons, if you've got a player like Commons who has got the ability, he's a luxury. And is there room for luxury players in the modern game against top quality sides? Even though he was pivotal for Neil Lennon's Celtic, Lennon used to bench him in Europe. So while I love players like Chris Commons, I understand that their time
at the top level
might be up.
They're a dying breed, definitely a dying breed. I mean, Commons' squad number was today given to new signing Johnny Hayes. Lisa Hague tweeted, "Come on Celtic, you're breaking my heart," before showing her class by wishing the new number 15 all the best. Now, the aforementioned Johnny Hayes is the first arrival of the pre-season, as Brendan Rodgers' side is fine-tuned for our Champions League qualifiers. This is the stage of the tournament that the legendary Xavi doesn't feel Celtic should have to be involved in. Kevin, you called me earlier today to break the news of the draw. What are your thoughts on Linfield or La Fiorita?
I think it's very ironic that today that we started the Brexit negotiations that we have a farce a draw. Brexit is the biggest mess to hit Europe since Chaduri played that ball back to Fraser Foster. But already, since we've been waiting to record this, the game has been on the 11th of July in Belfast with an early kick-off. It's now the police Northern Ireland are saying no, we didn't want it. They want to switch it. Why, we're not talking about the football, we're talking about a big high profile game. They can't guarantee the safety of our travelling support going there. Maybe that's unfair on a lot of people from Belfast.
Yeah.
It probably is unfair. But if they can't play the game when UEFA want the game to be played, should they actually be in the competition?
Well, we spoke last week about your support of Celtic and you've travelled all over watching them. Would you go over there and watch that game?
No. I wouldn't. I've been to Belfast, not for football. I've been as a tourist. It's a lovely city. I've seen the areas. I spoke to a couple of guys today who went to the Cliftonville game, and I says, "Would you go back?" And they went, "No." And Cliftonville's more Celtic minded. And that game was on the 17th of July, and they says they wouldn't go back. They were actually saying that they don't want Celtic to take tickets. It's just turned it into it's
quite farcical.
It's the worst draw that we could have got, not from a travelling point of view, but from a logistical point of view. What's it going to be like in Glasgow? It's a Celtic Rangers game. I sometimes struggle to go to Celtic Rangers games because of the pantomime that surrounds it. And this game's turning into a pantomime already. I do feel sorry for the Linfield chairman, who, when he saw the draw, rubbing his hands, get the first tie at home. If they swap the ties over, the tie could be dead by the time we go to Belfast. They lose maybe a couple of thousand Celtic fans turning up if we got tickets. Maybe the novelty factor from the Linfield fans is no longer there because the tie's dead. It's a
tough one. It's a tough one for all involved, really.
It is.
And I think you get so excited about this stage of the season. I mean, Xavi, one of the greatest footballers of his generation, doesn't feel that we should be in that draw because of the stature of the club, the size of the club, the fan base. I tend to agree with him, to be honest with you. However, that's just the way it is, and we need to go to these different places. There doesn't seem to be much of a chance that it's going to be the other side for San Marino. So there is going to be an issue, and we just need to keep an eye on how the tickets are going to be allocated and how that's going to be dealt with. It's very unfortunate with any game that the focus isn't on the fact that this is our first game of a new season. It's an exciting campaign. It's the first time I think Brendan Rodgers has managed a competitive match in Northern Ireland. So all of these things go by the wayside, and it's just all about the possibility that there might be trouble, crowd trouble.
Are we going back to the 17th century here? We're going for a game of football. All of this rubbish shouldn't have come into it. It really shouldn't have come into it. And I do feel sorry for the decent people of Belfast, Linfield fans, who are having their moment in the sun completely ruined.
Because it will be such a spectacle for the club, as you say, that it's going to make them a lot of money, or there is potential for that. And it's just going to be a logistical nightmare. I mean, I would hate to be the match commander at that game, I'll tell you, and have to set up, the policing for it. It would be an absolute nightmare. I
think that's one of the reasons why Police Service Northern Ireland now want to switch it, because they haven't got the resource on the 11th to police the game, no matter how early it was. And you've also got the possibility that one of the satellite channels will want to broadcast it.
Yeah.
And if it's an afternoon game, or Tuesday afternoon, it's less money for Linfield, because the viewing figures would be less. At 5 o'clock, there's maybe a chance that they'll get a bigger fee. The telly will want to pick it up. But the police are going, no, we haven't got the resource because of other things that are happening in Belfast over that week.
Yeah, I mean, they'll be stretched.
They will be.
Massively, It's something that I'm pretty sure we'll discuss again, and it is unfortunate that we're not talking about the football, and because obviously we're on such a high, and last week we were talking about the fact that you were going to the Scotland-England game. It was a dreadful morning, but it brightened up. Now, we recorded the pilot episode on the morning of that particular game, Kevin, and you were at the game. And for me, there was mixed fortunes from our very own Lee Griffiths and Craig Gordon. Starting off with Lee, on the evidence of that performance, England fans must be wondering why this player can't get a regular starting place under Brendan Rodgers.
Aye, unless you're a Wolves fan, then you probably know why. I mentioned slightly earlier there about the size of the England players, and when you look back at Lee Griffiths, if that would have been Lee Griffiths that we signed in January 2014, he would have got eaten alive. Last Saturday, he pressed tactically, he harried, he was a pain. He stood up physically against them, even though a lot of the times he was getting out jumped. He put himself in there. His football, his game intelligence was better than what it's ever been. His game intelligence is improving when he's playing in that sort of lone frontman role. He can hold the ball up well, he knows when to run, he knows when to pass. That wee bit of the selfishness is getting kind of eroded. It can't totally get eroded because we've lost the player that's actually in there. But when I saw him last week against elite athletes, I went, aye, that's probably his best performance I've seen against a top quality side, top quality defenders. Well, there's a bit of an argument whether Cahill and Smallin are top quality, but they're better than what he faces week in, week out. And are the Champions League level defenders, maybe middle order Champions League defenders, but he was absolutely superb. And the first ones, there's no pressure on his first free kick, even though I was wondering why he was sending away Charlie Mulgrew. But the second one is just pure callousness. I'm going to do this again. And as soon as it left his foot, He went, that's in.
And that's the thing with a player like Griffiths, and he's got that cockiness about him. You were talking earlier about being quite selfish, which has been part of his game, but that allowed him to, it gave him the chutzpah to say, right, I'm going to do this again. I mean, you know, he needs that flaw, as it were, to have moments like that.
He's got ability there that can't be coached, but he's learning to be coached to do things where, when we signed that player from Hibs, he wouldn't have dreamed of them. He wouldn't have dreamed of the pressing game. He wouldn't have dreamed of going out wide and no cutting inside and having a shot. And I think the change started with Dyla, and it's improved under Brendan Rodgers. I mean, last season he was a bit unlucky. He started off under Rodgers until he got injured just before the 5-1 Rangers game, the first one. But there's a quote for Rodgers in August 2016, and he says if Lee Griffiths had a Latino name, he'd be up there with Suarez and worth £15 million if he keeps on progressing the way that he's progressing, the way that he's working, the way that he's learning. I see a lot of Suarez in Griffiths. No as good, obviously, but there's that wee bit of spark, and you need that wee bit of spark. You need the bit of ability that he's got that can't be coached, that's there. It's that nature where, since he's been 12 or 13, school teams have gave him the ball and he's just done what he does.
Yeah.
Suarez has got that. Sometimes Suarez looks like he's still playing on a school football park, and Griffiths sometimes, when he picks up that ball, dips his shoulder and goes and shoots. He's got that. But when you step up a level, we spoke last week about elite level, where Rodgers is dragging the club upwards, Champions League level, he's got to develop his game, and I can see it developing. I really can, and I do think that a lot of people says that last week's performance was playing for a move. That's just rubbish. That really is just rubbish.
I think so. I was going to ask, I mean, the first time I ever seen Griffiths in the flesh, he was playing at Central Park in Cowdenbeath, right? And I don't want to upset any of my Fife friends, and I do have friends who are season ticket holders at Cowdenbeath, but you know what Central Park's like. So it was one of the days, and Hibs were playing there in the Cup. It might have been a replay, in actual fact, and Griffiths was on loan from Wolves at the time, and he fell out with his own fans, and he was making gestures to them and all this kind of stuff after he scored the goal. He'd done the old Ivo Berkovic when he scored the goal.
He'd done that with us.
And I remember thinking, this guy, he's like that kind of behaviour. I thought, how on earth is he going to make it in, you know, Scottish football and with Hibs with that kind of attitude? And we've seen tiny wee elements of it in his Celtic career. The mention earlier that you said there with having a wee spitting the dummy out moment with Rodgers. When you look at him, how can we keep him happy if he's not playing every week? Would be my first question, because he looks like the type of guy who is just itching every single week to get out the traps and play. And you know, are we able to rotate that position to such a degree that Dembele's getting enough games and Griffiths is getting enough games, or do you think that his future may lie elsewhere?
I don't think his future lies elsewhere. I think he's had his go at England and it didn't quite work out for him. He seems a bit more settled in his home life up here. I do think we play enough games for Griffiths to get a game. Is Dembele our main striker? Well, you've got to say Griffiths has got the jersey at the moment because Dembele was injured towards the end of the season.
Yeah.
Is Dembele going to be here the whole of next season? We can't answer that. Is he going to be here by the end of August? We can't answer that. I think Griffiths is reliable, and I think Rodgers sees room for improvement, but also sees the player, also sees what he brings, also sees that left foot's amazing. That left foot can strike the ball from anywhere. He's different. He's completely different from Dembele for me. If you look at Dembele's goals, they're all in and around the penalty box. I don't think he scored one from outside the box.
True.
Maybe the one against St Johnstone. I think that was right on the edge of the box. Dembele looks like an athletic player. When I was talking about elite athletes, Dembele's got the build of a modern day elite football player, an athletic football player. He looks like a fit football player who's got ability, but he's been well coached. He knows when to make runs. He knows when to use his pace. He knows when to use his power. I haven't seen Dembele use the instinct that Griffiths has got to ferment a chance out of nothing. Just give themselves that yard and bang a shot for 25 yards into the bottom corner. I haven't seen Dembele do that yet, but then I've seen Dembele have elements to the game that Griffiths hasn't got. Strength. Whereas Griffiths was bouncing off some of the England players last week, Dembele wouldn't have been bounced off, he would have been bringing the ball down. Griffiths more had the nuisance factor, and the factor that he wasn't going to be bullied by them. If they knocked him down, he got back up and went again. Whereas I think Rodgers maybe sees Dembele in certain games, especially away from Europe, that Dembele can stand up to the pummeling and bring other people into play. Dembele is better playing up front himself, but Griffiths has definitely shown improvement, definitely, at doing that role.
Do you think the fact that Griffiths maybe has a wee bit to go to reach his maximum potential is something that appeals to Rodgers? Because he's all for developing players, and he may see a bit of a rough diamond in Lee Griffiths and he thinks he's somebody that I can work on. Do you think that maybe appeals to him?
I think Rodgers knows what it takes to be successful in Scottish football. He knows that Lee has got ability, but I think he wants to make him an all-round better player. And as you says, Rodgers is all about developing players, and with somebody with a player with the raw talent that Lee Griffiths has got, Rodgers must have a look and go, I can turn him into a better football player if he wants to be the 24-hour athlete that he needs to be in my setup. And I do think Rodgers will give him a chance, but the only person that can take that chance is Lee Griffiths.
And I hope to see a lot more of him in the new season. The thing that you mentioned there is the amount of games we play. I mean, there's potential last season for someone to have played 60 games, and the most appearances was by Craig Gordon, who on the flip side, when we're looking at the Scotland-England game, got quite a lot of criticism following the game. One tweet that stuck in my throat a wee bit was Chris Sutton saying that he's the weak link as we go into the Champions League. I mean, after his Lazarus-like comeback following a 2-year layoff, and we spoke about that last year, it actually looked as though Brennan Rodgers didn't fancy him last season, but he went on, as I say, to make more appearances than anybody else in the squad during the Invincible season, 55 appearances. Do you think this is a position that Rodgers will be looking to strengthen, or are you quite happy with the goalkeeper situation?
I'm going to defend him with the 2 goals against England. At the time, I thought I was high in the William Hill South Stand, up the upper tier. With the first goal, I thought the ball had went straight through him and he had got a poor hand on it. When I saw it again on the TV, Tierney goes to dive in, then Armstrong dives in and unsights him, and the ball comes through at a fair rate, and there's no way. He's maybe went down a bit early expecting the shot, but could he have done better? No, it wasn't as bad as what I thought it was. The second goal, I was right behind it when Sterling crossed it. I thought he should have came for it, but then I saw, I don't know what channel you watched the game on, whether it was BBC
I watched it on.
ITV's cameras were in the North Stand,
right? So
they were behind Sterling when he crossed the ball, and it's a fantastic ball. There's no way Craig Gordon could have came for it. He could have done better when Harry Kane was at the back post, but Charlie Mulgrew had lost Harry Kane, and Andrew Robertson had went up the park expecting Armstrong to play him the ball, and so the whole transition, Robertson was struggling to get back. Craig Gordon did actually say he expected Harry Kane to header the ball. He says, and when it dropped, he says, I knew. He said, I'd got caught. He hadn't positioned himself. Let's be truthful about this. Is there any better goalkeeper out there that would come to Celtic?
I'm personally in disagreement with the likes of Chris Sutton, who has come out and said he's a weak link. I don't see the goalkeeper as being a problem at Celtic. It's not something that I would concern myself with. I'm quite confident with Craig Gordon, and I think that having had that knock quite early on in the season, to recover from that and go on to be a consistent performer. And we mentioned the celebration when we clinched the treble and on his knees. You know, he's been through a lot of kind of painful times in his career, and just, for me, I don't agree with Sutton. I think we've still got a solid goalkeeper in Gordon, and I'd be quite confident in him being our number one next season. I
do agree with you. I really do. I think he's got that. He's a match winner, and there's been a few times, I'm trying to think of the game, he produced a great save towards the end of the season. I can't remember what game it was. It was a fantastic save. And the cup final, he made a few important saves in the cup final as well. And I do think if you're 1-0 up, or it's nothing each, 85th minute, or 1-0, 86th, 87th minute, Craig Gordon can save you 3 points.
Yeah, he can.
He can produce a save that'll keep this lot, get you those 3 points, or get you that point that you need. People forget Israel, him saving that penalty kick. That seems to have been forgotten about at that point.
The importance of that.
We would have been out,
yeah,
if you hadn't saved that penalty kick. I sometimes think Big Sutty does things for effect.
Oh, he does, without a doubt. I mean, I felt that there was certainly disappointment, obviously, after it felt like a defeat when England equalised, right? So they're looking for who to blame, etc. But to come out and say that, you know, Gordon's the weak link, I felt was unfair. I mean, I look at that Celtic squad as very little weak links anyway, but Gordon wouldn't be a guy I was looking to replace for next season. Another big thing after the game was some of the choice songs that were being sung at Hampden Park. And talking of songs, you've been given the task of choosing our first track this week. I know this is something that wouldn't have been too onerous a task for you, Kevin, so what have you chosen to play? Tell me a wee bit more about the artist.
I've chosen to play a song by Father John Misty, who I've just recently got into, who's a kind of ragamuffin Nick Cave, country and western Nick Cave, who leads an interesting, debauched lifestyle and writes about it. I chose this track, Total Entertainment Forever, because I think it reflects well on Chris Commons, because he always have that entertainment that he's provided us, and that's why I chose this song. It's for Father John Misty's new album, which is a decent album. It is a decent album. I haven't really got that much into it, but I really love this track.
So this is Total Entertainment Forever by Father John Misty.
Taylor Swift every night inside the Oculus Rift. After Mr. and the Mrs. finish dinner and the dishes. And now the future's definition is so much higher than it was last year. It's like the images have all become real. Someone's living my life for me out in the mirror. are all the same. You're a star now, baby, so dry your tears. You're just like them, waking up from the nightmare. Na 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 na. Come on, no God to rule us, no drugs to soothe us, no myths to prove stuff, no love to confuse us. Not bad for a race of demented monkeys, from a cave to a city to a permanent party. Come on. When the historians find us, we'll be in our homes, plugged into our hubs, skin and bones, a frozen smile on every face. As the stories replay, this must have been a wonderful place.
In coming episodes of the CQN podcast, we will have new and current interviews with guests who have a Celtic state of mind. I hope you enjoy the insight from this week's guest, Lisa Hague.
Talk to me about when Celtic was first mentioned in the house. What do we know about it?
I'd never even heard of Celtic Football Club. So I've been with Christian for 16 years, and been with him since his first club at Stoke City, Derby, Nottingham Forest, and from a family that doesn't follow any sort of football. My dad wouldn't know the difference between a football and a rugby ball. So I'd heard of our local clubs. From Nottingham, heard of Nottingham Forest. That was about my limit. And we was on holiday at Centre Parks for a few days away, and Chris said, I'm being flown up to go and have a medical at Celtic tomorrow. And I said, where's Celtic? Thinking, doesn't sound that local to Nottingham. And he went, Scotland. Well, at that time we were playing for Scotland, and I'd been up to Scotland once, that's it, just to watch a game, because I didn't used to go and watch Chris play football very often. And I'd heard of Neil Lennon because Chris and Neil had played at Forest together, so that was a name that I sort of knew. And Chris, the next morning, flew up 7 o'clock in the morning, up to Scotland, and never returned. So at the time I was 7 months, probably 7.5 months pregnant with William. Moved up a few months later, but that was the first time that I'd heard of Celtic. And imagined it to just be like any other club.
Yeah.
There was no more excitement for me of Chris signing for Celtic than there was for him signing for any other team.
Right.
Because at that point, it was nothing special to me.
Right. Okay, so we're 7.5 months pregnant, and I presume the next few weeks are a wee bit busy, so you didn't move up immediately, I take it, or did you move up before William?
So Chris had signed then in the January, and Chris got put up in a hotel, so I would come up and just do the odd weekend, and then I moved up I actually moved up on the 13th of March, and William was born on the 14th of March.
Goodness.
So I moved in straight in at it with, and April was 15 months old.
Right.
So it was a new world, moving up there, not knowing anybody in Scotland,
Yeah.
no one person, and then having a 15-month and a brand new baby.
Yeah. And by the time you moved up in the middle of March, had you realised that this was something a wee bit different in Stoke City?
Well, I went to, the first game was Aberdeen, and it was at Hampden, and I feel like one of the first few games that I went to, we were losing, and the Celtic fans were still jumping and bouncing about, and I thought, I've never seen this before. On the games that I've been to, if you're losing, your team sit down and they don't do much, and our fans were singing as if we were winning. You wouldn't have known if you didn't look at the scoreboard. You wouldn't know who were winning, who were losing. That was the first time that I thought, well, that's a bit different. Chris scored very quickly in his first game, So that really obviously started his career on a high. But that was the first thing that I thought, we're a bit different up here.
Right. And then I take it motherhood kind of takes priorities for the remainder of that season, but we got to the end of that season, and I remember Chris had a huge impact on the second half. I remember specifically writing that he was a one-man league challenge, but lost the league very late that season, but he transformed the team. So we were on a journey with Chris at this stage. Had you realised the impact that he was having? Had you realised, this is a bigger thing we're into now?
I did. He went to one of the games and he scored, and then we went back to the hotel and we walked in and the restaurant stood up and started clapping as he walked in, which I think was a well done for the game and welcome to Scotland. And I thought, this is different, really, up here. This is not like at home. And I quickly realised how the city's sort of divided and how football is. It's not just a football game. This is a way of life. This is what you've been brought up generations. And I realised it was, a lot more hardcore than down south.
Of course. Now, you can we maybe talk a wee bit about the Lola Commons Fund, because it's informed quite a lot of what subsequently happened. Tell us a wee bit about that, when you started it, and what you want to say about that, Lisa.
Well, so a charity got in touch with me called Simba, and nobody. So Simba's a big charity that supports families that's gone through miscarriage, stillbirth, infant loss. And I'd never heard of the charity Simba. It was Sands that had supported me and Chris when we lost Lola in 2008. And they got in touch with me and asked me if I'd like to be an ambassador. So they'd done the homework, figured out that we'd lost a baby. I don't think really anybody in Scotland knew that we'd lost a baby. And not a lot of football fans back home did either. And it's funny because it's only 9 years ago that it happened, but social media weren't massive. There weren't Twitter and Instagram, and me and Chris had never done Facebook. So when we lost our baby, even though I was full term, it was only fans that had maybe seen me to and from the car after a game, the odd game that I'd go to. So everything was kept quite quiet. Chris had chosen to carry on playing football between her dying and her funeral, and he only had, I think, 3 half a days off in the whole time. Right. So he sort of blended in that nobody really knew that we'd suffered a loss, which we liked. We liked keeping it private. So Simba got in touch with me, asked me if I'd be ambassador. I said thank you, but no thank you. And I think at that point they'd seen that I'd done bits and bobs of charity work up here with Oscar Knox and things. They were probably quite surprised that I'd said no, but I just said, I'm ready to be a different Lisa up here. A lot of people, work-wise and things at home, know what we've been through. If I have to be known as Lisa the Wag up here, although it's not the role that I play, I'm more happy to be known as Lisa the Wag than Lisa that lost a baby. And all they said to me was, will you have a look at the website and, just maybe have a rethink about it. Just have a look at the website, see what we do. So there and then, I came off the phone, true to my word, logged onto the website and fell in love with everything that charity did. I am the most easily inspired person on the planet. So I'd said to Chris, the charity's wrong. I said, no, it's not for me. 45 seconds later, I looked at the website, come downstairs and said, I'm going to be ambassador of the charity Simba. And he's like, of course you are. Of course you are, Lisa. And quite quickly, I saw the impact of Celtic fans. 95% of the money that's come into the Lola Commons Fund has got to be, it's been through Celtic fans.
And this, just so we get the chronology right here, you were involved with the Oscar Knox campaign prior to?
First, very, I was still pregnant. I was pregnant then with Jax. So very early. We had a lot of babies in a short space of time. But I was pregnant with Jax, and I got involved in the Oscar Knox campaign. Pretty much taught me everything I needed to know about Celtic.
Yeah.
And it taught me, I'd heard of this thing called the Celtic family, and I didn't get whether that was a group of supporters or that was people that were immediately involved in the club. I didn't know if it were a bit cheesy. I didn't know what to think of this Celtic family bit.
You don't know, I presume you don't know the role that you played in this, because I remember at the time, Mark Martin, who was the first one I think to get in touch with you, you were going to help.
Yeah.
He says, and he was very excited about this because we hadn't got anybody from the inner sanctum of the club at all. Wags, it just wasn't, out of reach, beyond belief. Players, no engagement, no interest whatsoever. All of a sudden, with somebody who was coming from that inner sanctum to the fans, and it platformed that campaign, and it platformed the people that were running that campaign so that they were enabled to run a better campaign, and then enabled to take those skills and that platform and go and do so many other things they've actually done since then. You probably don't realise that the input you had just to give that campaign a kick right at that point in time, but you did.
Well, I saw this cute boy's face, Oscar Knox, on Twitter, and I actually got in touch with them to say, oh, you're doing a bucket collection up at Celtic Park, and I thought, I'm going to that game, I'm happy to stand, and the kids can get involved, and the response of a player's wife,
yep.
And because we're doing really well at the time and stuff as well, so a well-known player standing there, I mean, this response was overwhelming, and I quickly sort of said, my 6 hours or 3 hours is as much valuable as every other guy's 3 hours that he's spending there. It looked a bit funny because I've got this big belly and 2 small kids, and we'd all got buckets in his hands. But yeah, so it was me that said, do you mind if I get involved in this? Of course, they welcomed me, open arms, and a big fuss was made about it. But it was seeing the amount of support around Oscar's campaign from that and being involved, and they made me an ambassador of the We Oscar for Life, which was a group of Glasgow supporters. And then I quickly realised what this Celtic family was all about and what it was. And when we then sent Oscar and his family over to Philadelphia, and instantly was caught by a group of Celtic supporters that were there with presents for Izzy and Oscar, food parcels, gifts, a bit like, right, you're over on our patch now, let's look after you. And I thought, this is what this is. This is pretty much, you can go anywhere in the world and you've got a pocket of friends there ready to support you. So then I got it. So the Oscar Knox campaign taught me everything I needed to know about the club and what sort of people I was going to be mixing with and what sort of people were going to help our fund, which is what it did. It grew. The Lola Commons Fund then, when we saw how much support we were getting for Simba, they quickly said, listen, this is massive. Do you want your own pot of money that you can be in charge of?
Right.
Which I loved.
Right.
There's one thing I can do, and that's spend money. So it went from just being an ambassador and raising money to there's the Lola Commons pot. Anybody that wants to support us. And to be fair now, I don't do loads and loads of work, which I'm going to have to kick back up again. But I don't do loads of work on the Lola Commons Fund because in the first 2 years we raised about 100 grand. Mm-hmm. And then I said to the charity, I'm going to take a step back now because we need to spend this money.
Yeah.
You've got this pool of people that, whether they've got any money or not, they're giving you money. They give you the last pound. Yeah. And I thought, we can't ask for money unless we need it.
Yeah.
So we need to spend. So it's took me 4 years to get down this money because it's not a quick job in turning a room over in a hospital and buying equipment, and everything's got to be signed off today. Ironically, as we're doing this, the charity have given me a little kick up the bum and gone, your 4 years, your money is drying out. Mm-hmm. No, I'm happy to ask people to support us again because now we need it. But that money, about 100 grand in 2 years, it was like, wow, we can do so much. And we have. That was our 25th cuddle cot that we donated to hospital 2 weeks ago. Several family rooms, so many thousand boxes, memory boxes. So we are supporting families massively, and that is my Lower Commons Fund is down to Celtic fans supporting that, which is unreal, and it's got to be thanked. We've got, as me and Chris and our family and people that have suffered loss, I've got to thank the fans back because it's those people that's put the money in the pot. Right.
This sounds like emotionally hard work. I honestly can't imagine the trauma, and getting involved as I know you have with the families. Not only is it emotionally hard in itself, but it obviously pulls back to what happened 9 years ago. How do you deal with that? How do you cope with the drain on you and the the impact that has on you, or does it have an impact on you?
Well, I thought it would have more of a draining impact than perhaps what it did, because I've been, you put yourself in this role and then you quickly divert and support families in different ways. So my role at the charity had been to, support families after they've had a loss and turn up to the support groups. And then through social media, I get a lot of people that want to share pictures with me of the babies that's died years ago and currently. So it's been along that line. And then one of the things that I wanted to change was how midwives could support you in a hospital as well when you've just received the news, because midwives are there to look after babies that's been born, that have got troubles, and the families and medical. And then you're asking them to flip that and also become professionals at caring for families that's lost a baby, and it's a different world. And I was, so I go into hospitals and I train midwives on bereavement training, and a little bit of the don't be too frightened on being on eggshells. You can get in there with families, support them in this way. These are things to not say. These are ways of encouragement, because me and Chris never saw Lola, which that's quite shocking when you look at that now. She was a full-term baby.
You just took her away.
They took her away, yeah. That was because I asked them to. But I think because Chris played Forest at Forest and we were in a Nottinghamshire hospital and they knew who Chris was, I think they treated us probably a little bit different. And what we said when we didn't get, we were frightened to death that we were going to see a baby that had died, and we didn't know if that was normal. We didn't know if that had been classed as pretty weird, holding your baby and then do you give your baby straight back? We were spun out of his depths on it. So I said, I think we should just deliver and just take her away, and they said okay. Right. So whereas now that wouldn't happen. They'd say, well, maybe let's have a few minutes. Maybe we can wrap her up, and there's lots of different ways that you can encourage families to see the baby if they first don't want to. And I quickly realised that was a regret, and I didn't realise that until she'd been cremated a few weeks later. And then your feet touch the floor, the shock wears off, and then you realise, wow, I've made a big mistake there. And I didn't want anybody to ever feel like they'd made a big mistake or a regret. And I thought the more that we can raise awareness of this...
Yeah, and you really got to speak to midwives about this, because they're the only people who will be able to...
You've got to speak to midwives, and you've got to speak to as much of the public as you can. And that's what made me go public with the story. So that when me and Chris lost our baby, we didn't know one other family that had lost a baby at full term. Now, to be 23, 24 and never know another family that's gone through something like that is very isolating. Now, we hope that if somebody unfortunately lost a baby, they'd go, oh, Chris Commons, I remember Chris Commons and his wife, they said they lost a baby. They do these cuddle cots, and it means you can, and almost it normalises the fact that you can spend time with your baby. But I was in hospital delivering an advice session to midwives, and there was a knock at the door, and one of the midwives actually interrupted me mid-flow and said that there was a lady in the hospital that had lost a baby, and would I be able to speak to her, because randomly she started talking about hearing me on the radio and the Lola Commons cots that we'd donate. What I didn't, and I deliver these sessions on labour ward, what I didn't realise when I walked into the room is I'd see a lady on gas and air, on her side, in labour. And I was like, wow, this is new for me, here we go. So I ended up spending a lot of time with that family, and I was there after a baby had been born, and I saw a baby, which is the first time that I ever saw a 9-month-old baby that had passed away. And I pretty much said to Chris, I'm going to do this, I'm going to be there, I'm going to spend time with the baby, whatever I've got in my diary, wipe clean for the next 3 days, because I know it's going to knock me for 6, but I feel like I want to do it. And so I was there, spent time with them, helped plan the funeral, made sure the mum had got, she'd ended up having 9 blood transfusions. So I picked the baby up out of the cot, sat there so that the mum could see the baby, because nobody had held the baby at that point. Then everyone sort of warmed up and started holding baby Aaron. Spoke at the baby's funeral, got this amazing relationship now with the parents, mum and dad. And I found it, for want of a better word, the most feel-good factor, how the family had responded and said how different it had made their experience. And how grateful they were that I was there at that time. And I weren't wiped off my feet for 3 days. I actually had a smile on my face very quickly after. And the family said all the pictures that they'd got are sad pictures holding the baby. They don't tend to look at. Now the ones that they see where they were smiling, because I smiled when I held her, they're the ones that they cherish and they've got up in the house. And I just thought, I do these things around Glasgow and I'm known for being a little bit of a rocket running around doing stuff. But that is the most I've ever felt that I've supported a family because I was there at their time of need. So yeah, it's hard work and it's there, but I don't feel a drain. I feel a buzz from it. It's to help a family in need of their really vital time is an honour. So I feel good factor from it, although obviously I can appreciate that I'm there at the saddest point, but I know I'm helping somebody. So moving forward, and me thinking now, Baby Jax goes to school in August, and I'm going to approach my charity about doing more of that side, more of in the nitty-gritty, the hardcore time, supporting families, and I'm hoping that they're going to take me on and me do a role in that.
Right.
So I want to move that forward and do even more of it.
Good. Excellent. Excellent. So, you get involved in the Oscar Knox, you get involved in Simba, we've got the Lisa Commons Fund. I need to touch on the Commons Fund. I need to touch on the Lisa the Rocket a wee bit.
Yeah, I've been a bit of a rocket.
Yeah, absolute rocket, table dancing, loon. You're obviously at home here. You're at home in our community in the Celtic movement, or you wouldn't be that rocket.
Yeah.
Explain to us a wee bit about that, about how you see yourself, because I know you've done all this among fans on your own largely. You pitch up, you go in supporters buses, you go to pubs and sing and dance and all of that. So tell us a wee bit about that, about your relationship with the fans on that level.
Well, this isn't a cheesy thing to say. This is the proper things, but the fans make the club. So when I realised how good fun the Celtic supporters were, I didn't want to be the divide. I wanted to be in and amongst it. So when I'd be up in the players' lounge and I'd be sat with all the players' partners, who are brilliant, brilliant group of girls, and we'd all be sat there eating a prawn sandwich, drinking a cup of tea, looking out the glass. I didn't want to be behind the glass. I wanted to be in there with everybody else doing a huddle, feeling like I'm missing the party. I need to get involved in this. And, I speak to everybody at the club. I speak to the girl that brings the sandwiches out, and I speak to Peter Lowell, and I speak to one that's hoovering Celtic rug as you walk in. And I've had a feel for, everyone's different take on Celtic. And I've spoke to the old boys as well that used to play for Celtic. And, I quickly realised that at some point, the party's going to come to an end when, Chris plays for Celtic. And this is, ironically now. And I wanted to make my own Celtic memories. I didn't want to just sit there, like I had done at other clubs, although other clubs wouldn't have been this fun anyway. But I didn't want to sit there and witness it from behind glass. I wanted to get in there. And I am. I love a good time anyway. And I love to be in the thick of if there's something happening, I want to be in the thick of it. So Chris knows that anyway. Chris is the more reserved, quiet one. I'm the one that's entertaining him all the time. So when there was, people were saying, Celtic supporters buses, I thought I need to go on one of these supporters buses. And I went on one and I didn't know anybody on it. I just sort of said, I want to go on a bus. A few buses got in contact with me saying, come on our bus. And I got on there and it was, I got led astray. Don't touch anything called dragon soup because it's not as friendly as it might sound. And, I got on there and I did keep the wits about me. I didn't come off it absolutely legless. But I got on the bus and I, jumped about with everybody and had the best time ever. And one of the buses that I went on, you'll tell me, Paul, because I'm useless at remembering everything, but I've been on this bus quite some time, and when we got there, it was the game that we ended up winning the league. When we played the game, won the league, and I got put, quote this, I got put onto a pool table that they'd put a board on. I didn't climb on that. So I got lifted up, and everyone's cheering and clapping, and I'm, loving this fuss, like, hey, here I am. And they said sing us a song, and I think that we might have won the league twice at that point, but all I could think to shout was, here we go, 10 in a row, and the pub was bouncing, and I'm not really thinking about much, I'm just in the moment and enjoying it. And then we went in and watched the game, and we won. I think Chris might have scored. We won, and when I came out, I realised that it had been filmed quite a bit on everyone's phone, and it had gone round the national newspapers. And I did shit myself slightly and thought, oh my God, Chris is going to kill me when I get back. So I rung him up, and it was hilarious, because I rung him and I went, hey, well done on winning the league. And he went, have I got to get the muzzle back out for you? And started laughing. And I said, have I embarrassed you in any way? And he went, no, he says, everyone's having a party today, enjoy it, have a great time. And our bus then pulled off at a different pub, and we carried on before it took us back to Glasgow. But it was brilliant. It was the best day ever. I loved it. And the charity work as well, I went and poured pints at the Hoops bar. That was also brilliant. And along with the Celtic fans, I turned 30 and I wanted to raise. Chris said, what do you want for your birthday? And I said honestly, there's nothing that I want, there's nothing that I need. I'd be picking something for the sake of it. And he went, what do you want? So I said, I want 30 grand. I want to raise 30 grand for Marie Curie. So Chris supported me with that, and the Celtic supporters got on side, and I just basically put a tweet out and said, if anybody wants me to work at their workplace, I'll do it, and it'll be 300 quid for the day. And companies did, they got me involved, and the Hoops bar supported me massively and said, get a group of wags, come and pull pints behind the bar. The wags took no roping involved. I mean, it was Anthony Stokes' partner, former partner Debbie that got involved, and it was Derek Baricta's partner, she was Miss whoever, gorgeous looking, and I sort of roped up. We banged the Hoops tops on, we started pouring pints, and they cleverly got us to do our training on St Patrick's Day. Very clever of them. And they gave me this drink called Venom. So I had a few sips of that. Now I'm a lightweight, so before you know it, I'm back on the bar. And I think I actually climbed on the bar myself that time, and we were singing and it was, it was brilliant. I loved it. I don't regret any of the daftness that I've done, because they were brilliant. So, and I think, as a Celtic, I know Chris plays for Celtic, but as a supporter, I want all the good stuff as well, and I still want the good stuff even though he's not playing for them now. So Chris is buying me a season ticket so that I can still get involved, and I can actually get involved with the fans, because I've not really watched many games being out in the open, and so I'm hoping when I get my season ticket I can really get into it. Potentially make more of an arse of myself, because Chris don't play for them anymore. But I want the party to keep going, and I'll tell you what, there may be other players' partners in the past that they won't have had as much fun as what I've had, definitely, and they won't have the stories of, you'll never guess what this ended up happening, and there's so many stories that I'd love to tell you but wouldn't even be able to be put in, like when we hid all the booze in the bus toilet because the police came on, and I sat there thinking I'm the only female on this bus, and I'm sure the police knew that they were, I think I've got like a tray of Buckfast under the seat in front of me. But it's all good, and it's, Celtic players get their own stories, they get their own behind the scenes in the changing rooms, in the hotel rooms, the pranks that they do, and I feel like I've got just as much from, getting involved in the sport. Yeah. The players are missing out actually on a trick and getting involved more with the supporters. They deserve to get to watch a game and get in the thick of it. So yeah.
And it's not been a trend. You were maybe the first of this mould, but other wags, they're not engaging in that same way. Is that, is it just too difficult for them? Is it too out of their experience?
I don't know. I think, Griff's, the two mothers of Griff's children, they get involved a bit more. And you know what? Give credit where it's due, because quite a few of the wags have got involved in stuff. But because my name was a little bit more well known, because I was doing more, it'd more get publicised that I'd been somewhere than, they got involved. I don't think there has been any that's quite got involved and done the daft stuff as much as what I've done. But they should get involved. Maybe that should be my job, in coaxing the wags into getting involved. But you know what, at heart as well, I always feel like I am representing the club still. you know, I wouldn't be doing anything that was absolutely crazy, because I've still got that, you know, spine of thinking, you know, I'm a player's partner, and we all, as fans, we all represent the club anyway when we're out and about. So I'd still got that, and I think that's why Chris has always left me to my own devices, because he knows it's never going to get crazy.
Yeah.
It's going to get Lisa crazy, but it's not going to get much further than that. But there's not been many players' partners that's overly gone out there and done it, but they should do. Maybe they don't know that they're sort of welcome to get out there. And
there's no easy route for them.
Yeah, you see, I just sort of threw myself in there and then realised I would be gratefully received and I could carry on partying with everybody else. So, I mean, social media is a great way of getting in touch with. You can get in touch with anybody these days, and you know, supporters should invite the players' partners to events that they're doing, or to get involved, because you know what, you know, when we do move up and we don't know anybody. Celtic sort of caught me in a net, and I went with it because I didn't know anybody, and I do say to the girls when they move up, you know, get involved in the Celtic Foundation, get involved in what the supporters are doing, because you will honestly, they'll love to have you there, and you'll have the best time ever. So maybe it should be down to the supporters a bit more to, you know, welcome the wags out the box a bit, and you know, get them involved a bit, because I think if they did have an invite, they probably would turn up to it.
Right.
I would.
Right. So, Chris comes to an end at Celtic this month. We don't know where he's going to go next. He's fit enough to continue playing, though, so the chances are that he'll get a contract and it will not be within driving distance of the Glasgow area. Is the family going to remain here? Is that the plan?
Yeah, we've made a choice, and we've told parents now that, you know, originally maybe the plan was we move to Celtic, and then when that contract's done we move back to Nottingham. But this is home now, and our children are settled in school here, and both my boys up here. So where we are now is where we're going to stay as a family. Scotland now is going to be our home, which it's the best decision ever that we've both made, and we both came to that choice. Chris knew I'd take no coaxing into staying in Scotland because I love it. But no, this is home. The kids wouldn't have it any other way, you know. So this is us staying in Glasgow. I don't know if football will take Chris a little bit further afield. I don't know if maybe down south, but we'll be staying here as a family. And, you know, I think, you know, Chris would like to think he's got a couple of years of footballing left in him, but I wouldn't be uprooting the kids for that.
18 years ago, Celtic were entering one of the most tumultuous seasons in recent history, with the appointment of the managerial dream team of John Barnes and Kenny Dalglish. This was the era of Raphael Scheidt, Stefan Bonds and Ian Wright, of Larsson's broken leg and that defeat to Inverness Cally Thistle. It's no wonder then that I prefer to think back to that particular summer, more about the music rather than the football. As well as the late 1998 albums, the Beta Band's 3 EPs, and Mercury Rev's Deserters songs, I also became hooked on the Flaming Lips, the Soft Bulletin. Now, around about that time, we also had the Contino Sessions by Death in Vegas, which was a massive album for me as well. So I was listening to all these records and thinking, wow, this is a musical movement. This is phenomenal. And they were all from different areas, different parts of the world. It was a real purple patch for me as a music fan. Did any of these albums strike a chord with you, Kevin? What were you listening to around about that time?
I was heavily into the Death in Vegas album. I saw Richard Fearless, that is his name, Richard Fearless, doing a DJ set in a club in Paisley. But that album, that's a really good album. They were very underrated, while people like the Chemical Brothers got all the plaudits. Death in Vegas were more sleazier, more
a bit
dirty.
grimier, definitely.
And the song with Iggy, that's probably their best known song. And that's a classic song. When I still hear that, it still makes me stop and go, this when he starts. That
And the
voice,
perfect video
uh-huh,
as well to go with it.
scary video.
The big, I mean, when I think back to Death in Vegas as well, I was really excited that Richard Fearless was producing an Oasis album back then.
Aye.
And I thought that was going to be killer, because I loved the first couple of albums, but then you've got the feeling that in order not to become U2, if you like, that they change the template, that they do something a wee bit different. And I knew that Noel Gallagher had obviously, dipped his toe in with the Chemical Brothers and Tricky and various other artists, and I was buzzing to hear this Death in Vegas stroke Oasis album, but all fell to bits. Have you ever heard any of that, or what would that have given us at that time? I think it would have really made the whole history of Oasis completely different.
It probably would have made it different. I think Noel was possibly in a difficult place at that point, and it's no surprise that the album never saw the light of day. What album would have came out in '99? What Oasis album would have came out in '99? Or was it Nobody Standing on the Shoulders of Giants?
Well, it wouldn't have been any worse than that album if they had released it with a different producer, because for me, that's their weakest album, Standing on the Shoulder of Giants. Don't you
Some
think?
decent tracks. Gas Panic is a fantastic track. I'm sure it would have been Standing on the Shoulders of Giants.
Right. So it probably would have been a better move to stick with Richard Fearless.
The Richard Fearless one, because he sacked the band and they recorded it in France.
That's right. That's when you're boneheading. He left. Aye,
And
right.
you've got the masterpiece, which is Little James on it.
Well, I think Liam's song that he released a couple of weeks ago is head and shoulders above that. But it's that album. I expected so much. We'd had the kind of trilogy, the Oasis trilogy, where all three of those albums could be interlinked. And a lot of the songs in album 3 were being played at some of their earliest gigs, and that was like a clutch of songs, if you like, released over 3 albums. But then that Standing on the Shoulder of Giants, for me, I thought it was a big dip in quality.
It's got one of the best ever Oasis songs on it. Go Let It Out.
True. Beta Band, big influence from the Beta Band. I'm surprised they got away with that.
That was the first thing that we heard from that album.
True.
And it was a fun. The guitar, the one chord, then the bass line. The bass playing on that is absolutely superb, and it's Noel that's playing the bass.
Oh, is it? Because they didn't have a bass player at the time. Interesting. But so that splits opinion in this room anyway, that album. But the Death in Vegas thing would have definitely, for me, and I was interested when Noel Gallagher came out as a solo artist, and he was going to do 2 different albums. The one that he released, but he was also collaborating with Amorphous Androgynous, and that was another album that never seen the light of day, although I think a couple of the tracks ended up on album 2, didn't it? And I was really interested because it was something different and something new, and the fact that he was going to release maybe the traditional Noel Gallagher album alongside something a wee bit different got my interest, but unfortunately it didn't happen.
I sometimes wonder what you says there about artists changing direction to keep it fresh. I understand that, but then this year there's been albums came out with the Jesus and Mary Chain. Ride have just released a new album. The Charlatans have released an album. Cast as well have released an album. Towards the tail end of last year, Richard Ashcroft released a solo album. And somebody says to me, aye, but it sounds like them. And I'm like, well, who else would you want it to sound like? And I think Noel has maybe got to that point where he goes, this is what I do. Richard Ashcroft has definitely got to that point. I think his last album was possibly his strongest solo album, but it sounds like Richard Ashcroft. He's not trying to sound like anybody else. The Jesus and Mary Chain album, which is out, sounds like the Jesus and Mary Chain, and I didn't want it to sound like anybody else bar the Jesus and Mary Chain. So when you see artists, not everybody can be David Bowie and do everything well. Sometimes when artists change, it seems forced. They just think, I'll do this because it's different.
Or it's popular at that time. Yeah. Because I remember Blur, the single, There's No Other Way, and they had the whole Stone Roses drum beat and all this kind of stuff. And later on, it was a big single, but then later on, Damon Albarn admitted that, you know, the record labels told him we had to write a song that sounded kind of like baggy. It had to sound like something from Manchester. And he probably regrets it. It was a big hit though. But that era,
that album, Leisure, you've got Sing, and is it Bad Day? There's a lot of stuff on that album. It sounds Sid Barrett, Pink Floyd, and you can hear the stuff, as you said, of what the record company asked them to do. Forced.
But for a music lover, you actually enjoy the other tracks.
I think Leisure's a good album. I really do. I do flip through a couple of the songs right enough, but I do think Leisure is a very good album. Have you seen the documentary Star Shaped?
No, I've not seen that yet.
I would recommend that you watch it. It's Blur in the second album period, where they've went all sort of Doc Martens and they're skint. They've just came back for a tour for America and they're touring Britain and they've got no money and they've just released For Tomorrow, and it's a whole modern life is rubbish, and it captures a band falling apart before before they reach it. Rampant alcoholism, and it must be a quite painful watch for them now.
Oh, I bet.
It must be, because they do it in a certain way. They always had a look at English life, so there's a lot of it spent in service stations, them just doing stuff in service stations, and it's a good documentary. Really,
I thought
really
their
good.
last album as well, going back to what you were saying, the thread about these bands returning almost to this is what we are, this is how we sound. I thought that the last Blur album was because they have been very experimental. Some albums are completely different. You know?
Again, that seemed to have been a difficult album for them to record, and they gave the tapes basically to Stephen Street and says, go and do something with that, and he came up with Magic Whip.
And I was very impressed with that. But Stephen Street's an exceptional producer as well.
Correct.
I mean, when I think back, I always relate to this is the music I was listening to, and this is how Celtic were doing. So if we go back to that time, 99, 2000, bleak season, wasn't it? I mean, were you still a season ticket holder back then? What's your memories of that season?
Ian Wright playing for Celtic.
Kissing the badge.
It still gives me nightmares. It still gives me nightmares. Aye, it was bleak.
But then it was bleak, and we were chucking money at players, and you know, it wasn't bleak insofar as if you go back to the early 90s where, you know, it was bleak for different reasons, and we're bringing in guys like who shouldn't have been anywhere near Celtic Park, players like Wayne Biggins, for example. So we were buying big name players like Berkovic straight from the Premier League in England. I mean, this Brazilian came in, Brazilian cap, which I think was something to do with a contract they had with Nike, where players were getting caps, you know, chucked at them. They maybe had 3 or 4, and it was boosting their transfer fees. We brought in a lot of players who just weren't good enough. I mean, I remember Oliver Tebele at centre half. Stefan Bonds, one of the strangest signings Celtic have ever made. One of the guys who was maybe 24, 25, never kicked a ball.
I know.
But he was there for ages. He was round for like 3-4 seasons. It was a strange one.
The 99-2000 season under Barnes, we started off fantastically.
Mind the Aberdeen game, 7-0.
Aye, we started off fantastically. And I remember when the wheels came off, we got beat 2-1 at Tannadice. That was our first defeat of that season. And the wheels then just started coming off. And we were up against, would have been Advocaat's first year at Rangers, eh? It would have been, aye. So they spent quite a bit of money, we spent quite a bit of money. What I remember more about that season is the Celtic top, they all got recalled because they all fell apart, and these fell apart. I had it a week and it completely fell apart. That was a metaphor, that tells you what was going to happen.
It did. In the stadium, there was a panel, and then the Inverness game
got cancelled, aye.
And you just never know, because the game was delayed, and it was quite a last minute thing, wasn't it?
That Inverness game was funny. Obviously the game got cancelled and we were up in the supporters bus, but the supporters bus had another hire, so he dropped us off and says he would come back and pick us up after the game. So obviously the game never went ahead. So we were sitting there in the wee snooker club, snooker scene, all day, waiting on the bus to come back and get us. And what they done, Celtic brung in all the pies. They delivered all the pies to all the pubs round about the stadium, because it had nothing to do with them. You can't do that now, because we've asked them quite a few times if they would give any leftover food to homeless, and they're not allowed because of health and safety. They must run it.
That's a shame. I mean, I do recall. I'm always apprehensive when somebody gets their first coaching position at a club like Celtic. I don't think it'll ever happen again. I mean, the Neil Lennon thing was slightly different. It was almost like that boot room mentality where you were promoting from within. But it just doesn't work, at this level, I don't think. And Barnes coming in, I always felt that Dalglish would have been his safety net, and he would have been far more involved. And I was quite disappointed that it didn't appear to be the case. And then after the Inverness game, was it not a situation where I was reading in Alex Gordon's book that the board basically said, well, Barnes, you need to be a number 2 for the rest of the season, and Dalglish will be calling the shots, and Barnes refused, so he was showing the door.
I didn't recall that, but I do remember Dalglish taking us to the end of the season, and us had been brutal to watch, terrible to watch. I'm sure we played Kilmarnock in a League Cup semi-final, and we won 1-0. And I'll need to check the team, but I'm sure we had 5 centre halves on the park that night. And was it Alan Stubbs playing in the centre of midfield? It was terrible. We won 1-0. It was one of the worst games of football I've ever seen.
So the League Cup against Aberdeen?
Vidar Risef.
Tommy Johnson. Aye, that was a bad season. But obviously, the night is darkest before dawn, and Mark O'Neill came in and everything was rosy after that, but it was a poor season.
You have a look at the decision making at that point. We've spoke about media quite a bit, but Kenny Dalglish taking a press conference to Bairds.
No, with Vidar Risef.
With Vidar Risef. The club was just rudderless. Looking back, it was rudderless. And it's a shame that Dalglish's... Nobody really remembers Kenny as the manager, actually, and
I know.
And how he was behind Barnes. I agree with you. I don't think he gave Barnes the support that Barnes needed when things started going pear-shaped. Was
he not golfing in Marbella or something when we got beat for Inverness, and he was interviewed at the airport on his return? And I just think the interview that he gave, although it was maybe tongue-in-cheek, it came across really aloof, And I think I touched on it when I was doing my College Street Gang book, that, that period of time is best forgotten in the Celtic career of Kenny Dalglish, because we'd much rather remember what he did for us as a player. I
think he's kind of forgotten as a player as well. Now, I don't think he's as revered as a Celtic player as what he should be for the length of time that he was there. I think he's more revered in Liverpool than what he is. He maybe left under a cloud, but he had done everything that he could at Celtic. He was there for an extremely long time, part of the 9 in a row team, fantastic player. Didn't matter where he played, didn't matter where he was asked to play. He done well for us. I still think that there's, when you see t-shirts in the Celtic shop and you see them Jimmy Johnson, there should be a Dalglish one.
You're right.
There should be a Dalglish one.
I think that's what prompted Stevie Murray to write Kenny of the Celtic, the book. A kind of take on Roy of the Rovers, if you like, because Stevie is of the exact same opinion as yourself. And I mean, Dalglish had been there for 10 years, signed in 67. He left in 77. By that time, and it's something I discussed at length with Andy Lynch, who's really, really good pals with Kenny from a very young age, because they both played with Glasgow United. And in actual fact, Andy Lynch played in the game against Celtic Boys Club that obviously there was a Celtic scout at, and they later signed Kenny Dalglish, Vic Davidson, and a third player from Glasgow United called Freddie Petard. And obviously Andy wasn't signed here to go another route to get to Celtic Park. But he basically said, Dalglish obviously had this ambition. And by that stage, 1977, it was quite clear that that the Steen of old was a thing of the past. After the car crash, they believed that he lost a certain edge. He had the last hurrah when they won the double, right? But it was quite clear with the players that were being signed. And I think a big element of it was that they didn't treat Sean Fallon very well. And obviously Sean and Kenny were very close. So there was a lot of different things at play at that time. And obviously a year later he wins the European Cup with Liverpool. We lost Dalglish, Danny McGrain to injury, Alfie Conn to injury. There was so many kind of pivotal players. Paddy Stanton with a knee injury. So there was four really, mainstays of that side that we lost them, and we didn't replace them with quality. And we'd got the 440 grand in from Dalglish, and we bought a lot of players who were not at the same standard, and Steen didn't have that. Every signing up to a certain point that Steen made was a success. He would sign a player like Harry Hood, Tommy Callaghan, Dixie Deans, Joe McBride, and every one of them from Scottish clubs, every one of them was a success. And he was signing very, very kind of domestic players at low prices, and they just were not of the same standard. The final season, obviously, the strangest thing, if you look at that, the last game of the season was at Love Street, and St Mirren were managed by Alex Ferguson, and they beat us 3-1, and it was almost like a changing of the guards, passing the baton. But that was Steen finished, and then Fergie was coming to the fore at that stage, But no, it's interesting you should say that, because that's what prompted wee Stevie to write that book, the Kenny Dalglish Celtic book, because he is, he's not forgotten. I mean, certainly not, but what you're saying is right. And I think the nature of him leaving, and it's very much like when Charlie Nicholas left, and I'm not comparing the two players, it left a bad taste in a lot of Celtic fans' minds, and they've not forgiven him for it, I
think Nicholas is another case, and I was actually thinking about Nicholas as you were talking there, and then you just mentioned him. I mean, Nicholas was probably the finest Celtic player to come through the youth team since Dalglish. And the fact that he was only there, I'm going to 4 or 5 years as a first team player, maybe not even that, as a first team player, and left, not even to go to Liverpool, to go to Arsenal. I think a lot of Celtic fans think that he bought into the bright lights, big city, instead of going, I should go to Liverpool. And who knows what he might have been if he went to Liverpool.
It seems so obvious now looking back, and with the Scottish contingent at Liverpool.
Instead of just winning one League Cup, or was it the Milk Cup? No, I think it was called the Littlewoods Cup at
That's
that
right.
point.
He scored 2, didn't he?
He scored 2 against Luton.
I think the Nicholas case is interesting. There's 2 things I would say. Is Kevin McKenna, who was the editor of the Celtic View, and probably would have been at the time that Nicholas left. He did an interview with him many, many years later, and he told me that Charlie didn't want to leave in 1983. But the way that the board sold the story, if you like, was that this guy wants out. But the Celtic board were determined to sell him when they started talking in figures of £750,000. So that was one thing that's always stuck in my mind. And then secondly, when I was writing the Neely Mockin book, young Neely says, you're going to have to speak to Charlie, because Charlie loved Neely Mockin, right? Because Charlie was one of his ground staff boys. And young Neely had told me some great stories that his dad had told him about a young Charlie Nicholas, wide, but great player, very respectful to Neely. And so Neely got me his phone number, and it was a very, very nervous phone call for me to make, because I still kind of look up to Charlie. I mean, I remember he had a right good season when he come back for 1 year as well. He had a right good season, didn't he? Under Leon Brady, scored maybe 25 goals or so.
And I remember reading up on that, and I was at the football that time. I cannot remember Charlie Nicholas scoring 25 goals in a season for us, and I went at that point.
I do recall, because I mean, we signed him at the same time as we signed Collins and Martin Hayes, didn't we? Who is possibly the lesser of the 2 Hayeses that we've had in the history of the club. But he had a season that was quite bad. I think it was injuries, kind of bad season. But there was a one after that. It was Brady's first season. We had him, Tommy Coyne, with Jerry Craney coming through. We had some good strikers, but Nicholas had a right good season. But I remember thinking to myself, I didn't know how well it would be received, me phoning him and talking about Celtic, because of all the stuff around the media and some of the things he says, and a lot of the Celtic fans don't like him, basically because of his current persona. And when I'm not going to tell you what his phone number was, but it's obviously one of these numbers he's got on a contract where he's chosen a specific number. I can't tell you what it is, but it's very relevant to Celtic history, the last 4 digits anyway. So I phoned him up and he answered it in Spanish. He answered the phone in Spanish, and I thought, have I phoned the right number here? But it was Charlie Nicholas, and he started talking away. I think he's got a place over there. And what I got from the half hour or 45 minutes that I spoke to him was that this guy was passionate about Celtic Football Club. Now, he might not like the people who run the club, I don't know. I don't know what his agenda is in terms of how he speaks about the club and his day job, but it was like I was just talking to a Celtic fan. You know, that's the feeling I got. And the way that he spoke about Neely was so complimentary. You know, he basically said Neely was one of the most influential characters in his life, not just in his football career. And Peter Grant spoke like that as well. So Nicholas definitely divides opinion. You know, he definitely does. And I unfortunately didn't see him first time round in the flesh, but I do remember the kind of older Charlie, where he had lost that wee bit of pace. He was a wee bit heavier, but he still had it.
I do remember him scoring goals for us under Brady, but it kind of did take me aback that he had scored over 20 in one season. I'm like, wait a minute, I must be... The Buckfast years must have been kicking in there, and they're a bit hazy. But I do remember him scoring. I mean, we also paired Frank McAvenny with him as well.
Yes,
which is, we're now into the realms of complete farce.
Yeah, it was quite back in those days. The best thing about that was we had a really nice away strip, and that was the one that was the black and green vertical stripes with a wee white pinstripe on it. I loved that away strip. It was really nice, but we were absolutely
You're not alone loving that top. I've heard quite a few people saying that they would like that brought back. So if anybody from New Balance is listening, there you go.
Well, I think, you know, before I play the final song of the episode, just because we're talking about football strips, it's something I'm passionate about is the Celtic kit. I've done a lot of research recently about the Celtic kit. In your opinion, what colour should our away kit be? I know we've just released a new one. What should the colour of our away strip be?
Black and green.
Best designs have certainly been black and green, haven't they?
My favourite ever away kit is the one that Nakamura scored the league winning goal at Rugby Park. That's my favourite ever away kit.
That's classy, isn't it?
Simple.
Very nice. I mean, I like the shamrock strip, the political one, right, that they used to wear back in the 50s and the 60s. I don't think it takes away from the fact that it's still green and white, so why would you need to use that as a change strip? And that's why I find the choice of colours a wee bit obscure, because we only wear it really against your like, say, Kelly or maybe Hibs this season. And I do have a liking of the yellow, probably because of the centenary season. I like the yellow away kit as well.
Yes, the yellow away kit is nice. I think they've got the away kit right this year. I'm sure if we can wear it at Easter Road right enough, because the colour of green. I went about 2 years ago now. I went to a focus session with New Balance when they were designing. They said they were working 2 years in advance. So they were asked. Basically, it was quite interesting. People tell you these focus groups exist, and I'm going, aye, right, but they do. And you sit there and there are a team of designers, marketing guys, and they ask you questions about what's your favourite kit. What does that kit mean to you? What sells? What would sell to Celtic fans? Just a whole load of questions, and they film it. Then the designers take it back and take it all on. And we're probably to blame for the pink kit, to tell you the truth. I think. Are
you putting your name to that, Kevin?
I'm not putting my name to it, but there's certain the people who were in the room with me will know that the pink was the lesser of the evils that were being spoken about.
Wow.
Because they were asking things like a third kit. You see Man City's and Barcelona's third kit which is basically aimed at Wayne's.
Aye, just radical
And
colours.
just radical
Yeah.
colours, nothing to do with the colours of the football club. And they were going, well, we would aim it at kids, so it would have nothing to do with the colours of Celtic. What do you think? And I was going, no, it always has to be something to do with Celtic. It always has to be the colours of Celtic. So the colours that got bandied about were brown, navy blue, maroon, and somebody says pink. And I went, well, if you were aiming it at kids, a pink kit would sell.
Navy blue,
Navy blue.
maroon. Did they not do any kind of research into the club before they?
No, they were just sort of
Brainstorm.
Aye, just sort of brainstorming, and some of these colours. If anybody was in the room with me, I'm sorry, but there were some of yous in there that says maroon would have been fine, and he's getting who you are.
Oh, really? Brown, you've got the Sancta Pauli connection. You could have sold that to me, I think, maybe, and that was also on the Lisbon ticket.
Aye. So I was really quite obviously the way that they work. The pink kit must have already been in the pipeline,
Right.
and they must have already had the Lisbon ticket in. So they must have just been selling the point of, right, we've got this outlandish third kit coming up, let's fire it and see how it goes down.
See the reaction. I mean, going back to what we're talking about, that season that Nicholas scored 25 goals in the early 90s, we had red, white and blue in our shirt, and I don't know who would have sanctioned that. I'm going to ask Tom Grant, because he was on the board at the time, and I've spoken to him before. I'm going to ask what the process was back then, because that was ridiculous, having red, white and blue on the hoops, you know.
But then you have a look at that, the new top that's out just now, it's everywhere.
And
Absolutely everywhere.
It is a beautiful, beautiful kit. I mean, that is the best home strip we've had. Probably since, was it the 125th anniversary one where it was really plain? That was a nice kit, and this one just tops it though, because although the sponsor's there, it isn't imposing.
Aye.
It's no overpowering to the white hoop. It looks the part. It's a classy strip. And that'll take us up to the second song here. And as I said, that I was looking back in time at a band called the Flaming Lips, who have a lot of time for. I've seen them live. They were the scariest band I've ever seen at a festival. It was quite unnerving how frightening they were. It was quite claustrophobic, and I think the guy's quite eccentric, and they were showing all this really hard hitting footage behind the band, and but if you're not into the Flaming Lips, the band are phenomenal, and the album that I would suggest that you go and listen to is The Soft Bulletin. And this next song from The Soft Bulletin is all about next season. This is called The Race for the Prize by the Flaming Lips.
just